November 2021, paper 2, variant 3. Question 1 is cancelled. Micrometer screw gauge has been removed. Question 2, you have a speed time graph of a car. Which distance time graph represents the motion of the car over the same period? Distance time graph. So you have the speed of the car. It seems to be accelerating, right? Yes, it does seem to be accelerating. Constant acceleration. Excellent. Which of these graphs shows constant acceleration? Definitely not B or D. They are both wrong. Is it A or is it C? They both seem to be correct, don't they? Yes, but the difference between them is that at 4 seconds, the distance was 12, and at 4 seconds, the distance was 6. So we need to find the distance traveled. How can I find the distance traveled from this graph? The area under the graph, so half times 4 times 6. Which is 12 meters. So after 4 seconds, the car had traveled a distance of 4 meters, 12 meters. And the answer is A. Which statement about mass and weight is correct? Mass and weight. Mass is a property that can cause the change in motion. Mass is caused by gravitational field? No. Weight is a property that resists change in motion. Weight is caused by the gravitational field. Yes, it is caused by the gravitational field. Which substance in the table has the lowest density? 1.2 divided by 1 is 1.2. 1.5 divided by 1 is 1.5. 1.8 divided by 2 is 0.9. And the last one is 1. So the least density is C. Okay, 0.9. The weight of the bar is 4 newtons. What is the force exerted by support P? The weight of the bar is 4 newtons. Can I find the force at support P? Yes, I can find the force at support P. How can I do that? By kind of eliminating this pivot. If you want to eliminate this pivot, you'd have only one pivot, which is at Q, and now you'd have two forces. Where are these two forces? The first force is the weight of the bar, which is 4 newtons, acting at the 50 centimeter mark, right? It's acting at this point, 4 newtons. And then you'd have the second force, which is due to force P, due to point P, at this point, right? At the 10 centimeter mark. Can I solve for the moment? Yes. So F times distance, force times perpendicular distance equals force times perpendicular distance. P, or F, times the distance all the way to the pivot, which is from 10 to 60, it's 50 centimeters. And the other force is 4 newtons times the distance from 50 to 60, which is 10. 4 times 10 is 40 divided by 50, which is 0.8. 0.8 newtons. Again, how did I solve it? By assuming that there is no pivot at P, or that there is no support at P. Just assume that there is no support at P and that the only pivot is at Q. Then you can solve the question. A spring which obeys Hooke's law has an unstretched length of 10 centimeters. A load of 20 newtons is suspended. The new length is 36. Can I find K? The spring's constant. Yes, K equals F over X. The force is 20 newtons, and the extension. What is the extension? It's 36 minus 10, right? Which is 26. So 20 over 26 is 0.77. A cricket ball has a mass of 0.16 kilograms, travels at 30 meters per second. It hits the bat with a force of 10,800 newtons. After being hit, the ball moves off at 30 meters per second in the opposite direction. For how long was the ball in contact? Can I solve this? Yes, I can. This is an impulse equation, but you have to bear in mind that one of these velocities has a negative sign. One of these velocities has a negative sign. So for example, if I take this 30 meters per second to be negative, it's okay. I'll solve for the impulse. Force times time equals mv minus mu. The force is 10,800 times the time, which is equal to 0.16 times 30 minus 0.16 times negative 30. Can I solve for time? Yes, I can solve for the time divided by 10,800, giving you a very, very, very small time, 0.00089 seconds. Electrical energy may be obtained from nuclear fission. In which order is the energy transferred in this process? Nuclear fuel to the generator? No. Nuclear fuel to the boiler and reactor? Yes. Then to the generator or to the turbines first? Yes, to the turbines first. Which energy has the sun as its only source of energy? As the only source of energy, yes, it is oil. Geothermal, nuclear, and tidal do not depend on the sun. Question 10. Man attached to an elastic cord jumps off a platform. He falls 60 meters before starting to rise again. The length of the unextended cord is 30 meters. Diagram shows four successive stages in his fall. In which position is the elastic energy and kinetic energy present? Elastic and kinetic. You need both energies to be present in this situation. Is it A, B, C, or D? At A, was he moving? No, he was not moving. So A is definitely cancelled. At B, he was moving. There was kinetic energy. Okay, but was there any elastic potential energy? Was this cord being extended? No, it was not being extended. It was not being extended. So B is wrong. What's the difference between C and D? In D, he said that he falls 60 meters before starting to rise again. So at 60 meters, this is the maximum extension. It will not be extended any further. Yes, it is extended, but it will not extend any further. Therefore, at this point, he stops and then moves back upwards. So at this point, his kinetic energy was zero. Therefore, D is wrong and C is the only correct answer. Okay? Okay. Diagram shows three glass containers. All three contain water filled to the same vertical height. The area of P is equal to the area of R. Area of base of P is equal to the area of base of R. The base of the base area of Q is larger than the two. Okay, no problem. Students are asked to compare the water pressure at the bottom of each container. One says that the pressure at R is more than P. R is more than P. Hmm. Student 2 says that the pressure at Q is less than P. Huh. Well, someone might say Q is less than P because the area of Q is greater than the area of P. Is this correct? I don't know. Since 3 says that the pressure at all three bases are the same. Well, student 1 is wrong. Why? Because they both have the same height. They both have the same height. It does not have to do with the area of the base. Yes, P and R uh, do have the same uh, area, but again, it has to do with the height. So both of them have the same pressure. So one is wrong. Two is also wrong because we're not talking about the area. We're talking about the height of the water. The water level is what depends or what gives the pressure of this water. Okay, what gives the pressure is the height. So only three is correct. So three is only correct. A liquid is evaporating, it's not boiling. Which statement about the liquid is correct? Any molecule can escape? No. Only molecules with high enough energy can escape and only from the surface. Yes, this is evaporation. Okay, we have Okay. The same mass of gas is trapped in four identical cylinders by a piston that can move. Diagrams show the samples of gas in different conditions of volume and temperature. Which list gives the pressure of the gas in order from lowest to highest? We need the least pressure to the highest pressure. The least pressure to the highest pressure. So if we take a quick look, the least pressure would be the largest volume, right? Would have the largest volume. So is it one or three? Actually, it is one. Why is one the largest volume? Why is one the least pressure? Because of the temperature as well. Because one has the largest volume and the least temperature. So this is the okay, least pressure. And then three, it has the largest volume as well, but as the temperature increases, the pressure increases as well. So it's one and then three, one and then three. So the only correct answer is B. Okay, two and then four. Yes, four has the highest pressure because it has the least volume and the highest temperature. Hmm. An aluminum block has a mass of 200 grams. The specific heat capacity is 900 joules. How much energy is needed to raise the temperature from 20 to 110? E equals mc delta t. mc delta t. The mass 200. Can I leave it as it is? No, we cannot. Why? Because the specific heat capacity is in kilograms degrees Celsius. So we have to divide this mass 0.2 kilograms, right? 0.2 kilograms. So 0.2 times 900 times the change in temperature, which is 110 minus 20, right? Giving you a total of 16,200 joules. A solid and a gas are each given the same increase in temperature. The gas is kept at a constant pressure. Which row is correct? Gas is kept at a constant pressure. When you increase the temperature of the solid and when you increase the temperature of the gas, which one expands the most? The gas. The reason? Molecules in the gas each expand more, or the molecules in the solid are held strongly. Yes, they are held strongly. You cannot say that each molecule expands. No, the distances between the molecules increases. Yes, you can talk about the distances between the molecules. Question 16. Which row is correct for the materials to make the base and the handle of the pan? The base has to be a good conductor, while the handle of the pan has to be a poor conductor. 17. Diagram. The mountaineer can hear the stream, although he cannot see it. When he is closer to the gully, he can both hear and see the stream. When he is further away, he can neither hear nor see the stream. Which statement is not correct? Again, which statement is wrong? As he approaches the gully, he hears first the short wavelength higher frequencies and then the long wavelength lower frequencies. What is this? He hears first the short wavelength higher frequency. Does it have to do? Does the speed? Isn't the speed of sound constant? The speed of sound, yes, it is constant. So if you have a longer wavelength with a shorter frequency, with a less frequency, and a shorter wavelength with a higher frequency, would it differ? Which of them would he hear first? No, it wouldn't. So I guess this is wrong. I guess this is wrong. As he approaches the gully, the sound becomes louder. Yes, it does become louder because he's getting closer to the source. He's getting closer to the source. So this is correct. Again, we're trying to find the wrong answer. He hears the stream because some of the sound is diffracted. Yes, some of the sound is diffracted, which is true. Okay, this is a sound wave. It can diffract a lot more than the light wave. Yes. He hears the stream because some of the sound is reflected from the opposite wall of the gully. Okay, some of the sound is diffracted, some of the sound is reflected. Yes, it is true. So the only wrong answer is A. Okay. Which row defines the frequency and the speed of the wave? What is the frequency of the wave? It's the number of waves per unit time. What about the speed? It is the distance traveled per unit time. Ray of light travels from air into glass. You have the speed in air and speed of glass, wavelength, and frequency in air and in glass. Which suggestions are correct? Can I find the refractive index by saying speed of air in air or speed of light in air over the speed of light in glass? Yes, I can. Can I find the refractive index by saying the wavelength in air over the wavelength in glass? Yes, I can. What about the frequencies? Can I compare the frequencies? No, I cannot. No, you cannot. Okay, the frequencies would definitely be wrong. Why? Because the frequencies are the same, right? The frequencies are the same. So for this answer, we would say only 1 and 2. Okay, you would say only 1 and 2. The diagram shows a ray of light, which row gives the angle of incidence, and is this a total internal reflection? Is this a total internal reflection? It's quite obvious that it's not a total internal reflection, right? Which row gives the angle of incidence? Angle of incidence is Q, right? It is Q. So Q and not a total internal reflection. A photographer sees his image as shown. What could X be? What could X be? X could only be a mirror, right? X could only be a mirror so that he could see his image on the other side, and it is laterally inverted. Yes, laterally inverted. Question 22. The sun emits infrared radiation and light. Light from the sun reaches the Earth in 8 minutes. Which row gives the correct information about the infrared radiation? Can I compare the wavelength? Yes. RMILUXG, so the infrared has a longer wavelength than light. What about the time taken? It would be the same time. Why? Because they have the same speed. 3 times 10 to the power of 8. Which row gives the typical values of speed of sound in air, water, and iron? D is definitely wrong. In air, it is 340. Yes, in water, 1500. In iron, 5000. Yes, so it is A. What is ultrasound? Sounds that are too loud, too high pitched for humans to hear. Yes, they are too high pitched. The frequencies increase. A stationary charged particle is in a field. Which field can cause there to be a force on this particle due to its charge? Due to its charge. Gravitational field, magnetic field, electric field. So if this is a charge, positive or a negative charge, a positive or a negative charge, would a gravitational field affect its motion? Would it attract it, for example? Would it repel it or anything? No, to do nothing. So a gravitational field is wrong. A magnetic field, would the magnetic field affect a positive or negative charge? Or not, I'm not talking about a north pole or a south pole. I'm talking about a positive or a negative charge. Would the magnetic field affect it? No, it would not. No, it would not. So the only one is the electric field. Electric is a positive and a negative field. Yes, it would definitely attract or repel this charge. An electric current in a copper wire is due to the flow of charge. Which particles are moving? Electrons. Definition of the current. I equals Q over T. Direction of the conventional current. Conventional current. It moves from the positive terminal to the negative terminal. If he asks about the direction of the current of the electrons, you'd say from the negative to the positive terminal. Diagram shows a circuit containing resistance 1 ohm and 2 ohms. The voltmeter is connected at X now, and the voltmeter reads 6 volts. When P is moved to Y, to position Y, instead of being at X, no, it's now going all the way to Y. Can I find the new reading on the voltmeter? Yes, I can. I can. Some of you might say, well, you have doubled the resistance and therefore the voltage or the potential difference would be doubled. So it's 12, which would be a wrong answer. Why? Because now the voltmeter is not reading only one resistor, it's actually reading both resistors. So this is kind of a potential divider, right? If you had 1 ohm resistor and the voltage of this 1 ohm resistor was 6 volts, now you have two resistors in series and the total resistance of these two resistors is 3 ohms. Can I find the voltage? Can I find the potential difference? Cross multiplication, which would be 18 volts, right? Which graph shows the current voltage of a filament lamp? Filament lamp, the problem with the filament lamp is that the voltage is that the resistance increases, right? As the resistance increases, it curves towards the voltage axis, right? Curves towards the voltage axis. So it's the definitely 30 is cancelled. 31, two 3 ohm resistors and one 6 ohm resistor are connected in series with the cell. Which statement is correct? The current in the cell is equal to the current in the resistors. Isn't that correct? He said that they are connected in series, so the current is the same. Yes, it is the same, right? It is the same. The current in the cell is greater. No, it's not greater. It's the same. Potential difference across each resistor is equal to the potential difference across the cell. No, the summation of the cell of the potential differences across the resistors, the summation, if you add them together, would be equal to the potential difference across the cell, or the EMF of the cell, right? The potential difference across each resistors are equal. No, they are not equal because they are not equal resistors. You have two 3 ohms and one 6 ohms, so this is incorrect. What is the resistance of the parallel combination? You have R1 and R2, so it has to be less than either R1 or R2, less than the least resistor in parallel connections. Circuit breakers and fuses are devices used to protect a circuit from overloading. Which statement correctly describes the difference between a circuit breaker and a fuse? Difference between circuit breaker and fuse. Circuit breakers can be reset if they operate, but fuses need to be replaced. Yes, this is the correct answer, right? It is the correct answer because we can switch back on the circuit breaker, and that's why it's much more expensive to buy a circuit breaker than it is to buy a fuse. Fuse it's much cheaper than a circuit breaker, right? Electrical energy is transferred by transmission lines at high voltage. Which statement explains why high voltage is used? Why do we use high voltage? To decrease the current. Voltage is alternating. This is not why. Transmission lines have larger resistance. Actually, no, we want to decrease the resistance. They carry greater power. No, they carry the same power. The same amount of power is being transmitted. There is a smaller current for the same power. Yes, there is a smaller current. As you increase the voltage, the current decreases. Yes. Which diagram shows the magnetic field around a straight current carrying wire? Right hand rule, grip, right? Right hand rule, grip. So you have the current moving to the right. So if you grip your hand, you'd find the magnetic field lines kind of going out of the page as in A. Okay, as in A. Right hand rule, grip. Okay, the thumb is the direction of the current, and then just grip your hand. So you'd find the magnetic field lines moving in this direction. The coil in a DC motor is connected to a split ring commutator. What is the purpose of the split ring commutator? To ensure that the coil continues to rotate in the same direction. Isn't this correct? Yes, it is. To ensure that the size of the coil, no. To ensure that the size, do I care about the size, or does the split ring commutator have to do with the size of the turning effect? No, it does not. To ensure that the turning effect changes direction, no. The turning effect does not change direction. Continues in the same direction. A nucleus of americium contains 146 neutrons, 95 protons. Decays by emitting an alpha particles. How many neutrons and how many protons remain? Number of neutrons remaining will decrease by only 2. Will decrease by only 2. Why? Because alpha is 4 and 2. And we are very used to just saying, oh, well, I will decrease 4. No, this is from the mass number, the total mass number. What's 4 and 2? 2 protons and 2 neutrons. So we'll decrease 2 from the number of protons, and from the number of neutrons. It was 95, so it will be 93. The half-life for lead is 52,500 years. The sample of lead produces 800 counts. How long will it take for the count rate to drop to 100 counts per second? We do not have any background radiation, so we need to see from 800 to 100. We will divide by 2. How many times? Once, and then twice, and then thrice. So you have 3 half-lives, right? Yeah, 3 half-lives. Each half-life is 52,000 years. So all you need to do is 52,500 times 3. Okay? Times 3, which is 157,500 years. Oxygen 15 is used in hospitals. The count rate from a detector placed close to a sample of oxygen 15 was recorded over a period of 15 minutes. Right? The background count rate is 20 counts per minute, which is quite obvious from the graph that it has dropped all the way to 20, which is the background radiation. What is the half-life of the sample of oxygen? To find the half-life from a graph, which includes background radiation, right? It includes background radiation. So you have to use minus, divide, plus, right? Minus, divide, and then plus. How can I do that? I started off with 180 minus 20, which is 160. 160 divided by 2, which is 80, and then 80 plus 20 again, which is 100. So from the graph, you have to draw a line at 100, which will give you a half-life of 2 minutes. Okay? Because you have background radiation, so minus, divide, plus. Of the 3 types of ionizing radiation, alpha, beta, and gamma, why does the alpha emission cause the most ionization? Alpha particles have the smallest mass. Actually, no, they have the greatest mass. Okay?